We are here with one of our favorite people in the industry, Melissa Bachman. Thank you for joining us again. I know you are so busy and so many people want a piece of your time, and I just want to thank you for joining us here today.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
This is almost like a family reunion at the Archery Trade Show. That's where we're giving you guys this podcast this week, and all we ask you to do is like and subscribe wherever you're listening to podcasts or watching the podcast. I say this a lot, but 42,000 of you are watching this podcast or listening to it every week, and it's because of you that we can bring you guests like Melissa. Now, Melissa, we're not talking about breaking into the industry today. We're not talking about, what it takes to have that grit that you have for hunting. But one thing I want to talk about is particularly this deer season. How has it gone for you? I know you've had some work involved, and you have more work ahead of you.
Yes. It's been a wonderful season so far, but for me, late season is probably one of my favorite times of the year. And a lot of times people, they're kind of wore down and it's cold, and it takes some mental toughness to get out there and to hunt when it's in the single digits, when a snowstorm is coming. But I'm here to tell you it is some of the very best hunting you could ever find. And people who hunt late season, they know that. So sometimes I think it's kind of a hidden gem. But this week, for example, I knew that a big snowstorm was going to hit in Illinois. There is nothing you could have done to try to keep me out of Illinois for that coming. So what I did is I got there the evening before. I hunted that evening. I think we saw one deer sitting over a big bean food plot. Should be good, nothing, right? But I know that, okay, no big deal. The next day we get in, I think we went in about 9:30, 10 in the morning, and all day it snowed. Now we are talking total whiteout blizzard.
They got hammered, didn't they? Yeah.
We got a foot of snow. And so we sat there all day, and we probably had 30 to 40 does in our field, but no bucks came out. And it's kind of disheartening when you've sat there all day and it's a snowstorm, but the best time is always right after the snow ends. And everybody knows that, but I thought I still had an idea that, there's going to be bucks coming out. And when we were leaving, which you don't remember, is in Illinois, they're not really set up for a foot of snow.
Right.
We couldn't find the road to get out of there.
Oh, my gosh.
So we've got a single lane road that goes for about 2 miles, and you cannot tell if you are in the field or if you are on the road. So I got out, and I walked in front of my cameraman driving my truck, and I would check the edges and tell him where the edges were so we could get out of there. Now, the next day we came back, unbelievable. The snow had stopped. The temps were in the single digits. We had deer out so early. And that's one of the things about late season. I like to sleep in because I'm usually a little short on sleep. But we go in about 9, 10 o'clock. And by noon, you have deer in your fields. And I think that's something that's important if you're hunting food, to try to get there early. I'm not a fan of being there when it's dark because I don't like to push deer off that food plot ever if I can help it. I'm a big believer in, just let them kind of wander off, come in mid-morning. And also when you're coming in, you're watching the whole time. If I see deer on the field, I'm waiting. I don't want to bump any deer anytime if I can help it. We get in there, and the last 2 days I've had some of the best late season hunting I've ever seen. Every buck we had on that property was in that food plot by 1:30.
My goodness, wow.
And there was just one buck I want to shoot. He's an older deer, 6.5-year-old buck.
Wow.
And he came out. He's one of the first ones. And unfortunately, he just never would step inside a range. The closest he got was 71 yards, and he just stayed at that perimeter. And it's not that he was avoiding the blind. It's just when you're sitting on a big bean field, there's not really a reason he needs to feed in front of me. I'm literally just kind of waiting on luck. Now, I watched him posture up to numerous bucks and fight them, and all I could think is I should have brought a decoy. But normally, in January.
Have you had success with decoys that late in the season?
I've had it as late as December 16th.
Wow.
But I haven't used it later. If I could have had my decoy in that blind, I would have got down and I would have put that buck up because I guarantee you to come over it. Now, what I've found late season is they may not be as aggressive. They might not actually hit it, but if he's the dominant buck in that area and he sees another one, I believe 100% he'd have come to it, and it would have given him a reason. The problem is when you're late season hunting, you've got so many does out there, and they don't always love a decoy sitting there. So there's, a little bit of there's some benefits to it, and there's also some drawbacks to it.
How far what is your maximum range?
60 yards
for bow hunting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I try not to shoot past 60.
That's pretty darn good.
But 71, it's just too far. And one of the reasons too is I believe late season, a lot of times those deer, although they're calm, they're in the field, that's the time coyotes come out and get after them. So you're dealing with, I don't want them to be jumpy and me shoot at 70 yards and have them drop and spin and hit them somewhere. I just believe, 60 and in is what I want. I was confident he would do it. I watched him for 2 days for I don't even know how many hours, and he never stepped inside.
Did you have to wait him out then before you could get out of the stand?
Yes, wait till it's pitch black. And luckily, what I found is there's neighbors around. We don't have a huge property. Someone will do something to spook them out, just naturally. So we just sit and wait and wait and wait, and then all of a sudden something happens and the field clears.
I give you credit.
And then we leave. But sometimes it can be a while, and you're done hunting. You kind of want to just get home.
And it's cold.
But I really believe it's the best, because if you start spooking deer out of that field and they start associating that blind, they're not going to come within 100 yards of it.
It's especially on a big buck like that.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? I noticed that when you talk about after a snow comes through, I notice it especially in Illinois for whatever reason when I've hunted there. A little bit at home in Wisconsin. Have you noticed it in other states as well, or is it dependent on your region?
Like in South Dakota, for example, we get so much high wind conditions that sometimes I found that the deer will move in those bad storms, because it might be like that for a week in South Dakota. Where Illinois, I feel like they maybe hunker down a little bit more because that's not normal for the deer there. But almost anywhere, once that storm blows through, whether it's a rainstorm, snowstorm, there is no time better to be out in the field, in my opinion, than the moment it stops.
Yeah.
And then hunt as much as you can. Yesterday was a super high pressure day. Deer were already out in the field by 12:30. The bucks we wanted were all there by 1:30. Everybody's in the field. And that's where I think sometimes people make the mistakes. They think late season, you don't have to hunt mornings, get in there a little later. I think sometimes people are coming in too late and bumping those deer off. So it's really important. You may have a couple hours where you're just kind of waiting, but that's a good thing. You don't want to be, the last thing you want to do is associate any danger with that food plot.
I know you're really good at the stealth aspect. I mean, I know you've hunted your whole life, but you had people like Mark Kaiser and Gordy Cron and people. What do you do? Like, one thing that you said, you're walking into a stand, it's soybeans, whatever, you see deer out there. Are you just parking your butt and waiting?
Absolutely. Just sit down and
hoping that they clear before?
And they will. And they don't stay out there all day. They're always kind of moving and meandering in and out, and you just have to be patient. And I think that's so important, because it's not necessarily the one doe that's in the field, right? It's she busts out of there, and the bucks that are bedded 30, 40 yards in are like, whoa, what's going on? There's danger. So there's so much more to it than just the one deer you think you bumped out of there.
That's some really great advice, and it's something that is very hard, I'll admit, for me over the years. You want to get into that stand, you got X amount of hours left before sundown. I'll just bust these deer out of here. And it does make a difference, because you still might see deer come out, but like you said, that buck that could have been staging, he's not coming out. So you're heading back now to go after him?
Yes, so I'm here at the ATA show. I got in at 3:30 last night in the morning.
Gosh.
I got up this morning. I've had meetings all day doing stuff, and I have one more thing set up, and then I'm driving back to Illinois tonight so I can hunt tomorrow morning.
And you're only hunting that one buck?
Yes. Here's the thing. A new deer a lot of times will show up, but on our property, that's really the only shooter we've had pictures of. There may be new deer moving in. A lot of times when we have this much food late season, you will pull new deer in. So that's exciting, because at any moment, some nice new buck could show up, and I'll shoot him. But we have a nice 5x6 that's there. He's just too young. We've got a nice 8 that broke off some browse. It's just too young. The buck I'm after is the oldest buck that we have there.
How do you keep that? I mean, you're in that category of people that I have followed. How do you keep that fire going? I know it's deadly passion, but how do you keep that going? Because for me, heck with it. I'm tagging out. I'm done. But you're still going. How do you keep that?
It's hard sometimes, because it's the thought process of doing it. So I think any hunter, once you get out there, you're going to enjoy it, right? Once you're on stand and those deer start coming out, you're into it. You love it. It's getting over that mental aspect of getting your butt there, carrying all that gear through a foot of snow. I am stopping and I'm buying a sled when I go back, because I have too much stuff and I'm going to pull it in, because this time I'll be by myself. But I think that's part of it, is just kind of getting over that mental aspect and just doing it. But it's hard. I miss my kids. I miss my family.
That's what I was going to
kinda
say.
wanna just
You
go
have a
back
family
home.
at home.
Yeah.
And you guys are on the other side of the country now, right?
Yeah, we're in South Dakota.
Oh, you're in South Dakota now.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it does help having a supportive husband, because, I called Ben and I said, I miss everybody. I want to come home. He's like, no. It looks way too good.
That's
He's
pretty
like,
awesome.
stay there. He goes, if you need, I'll come help film. Because
that's pretty
so
awesome.
I think that helps, right? It's the support system. Because I think if it's just my decision, sometimes I'd be like, you know what, good. I gave it a good try. Season's over. Let's just call it. But you don't. You know, it's a team effort, and I think that's really important aspect of it too.
Wow, that is very cool. Did you have success other places this year?
Yeah, it's been a very good season. I had phenomenal archery success this year. I went up to Alberta. We did spot and stock. My husband shot 190-inch mule deer
My
spot and
goodness.
stock hunting,
Wow.
and I got on a monster within 20 yards, sat him out for I think like 4 hours, and dropped him right on camera.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it was some of the coolest
Oh, my
footage I've
goodness.
ever filmed. We did a moose hunt. Got a beautiful moose up in the Yukon. Had lots of great whitetails, all sorts of stuff. So
Living the dream.
thing is if you do enough hunts, you're going to have some success. We did Alberta late season, sat there for 7 days, dark to dark, never saw a shooter.
Oof.
And I'm talking a little pitch black blind below 0
And you're looking
temps.
at like a little seismic cut or something like that? Because
It's-
they can't bait in Alberta.
Nope.
So you're just hoping something's going to walk in front of you?
Yeah. And so, as much success as you have, if you do enough hunts, it's a percentage game. You're gonna find success. But don't get me wrong, there's hunts where I'm like,
That's
I don't know
brutal.
if I can do this anymore.
I've sworn off Canada because I don't want it as much as she does. I really have. It was Alberta.
Yeah.
It's
No,
what
I
did
get
me
it.
in.
Yeah.
It was after the fourth day of sitting in the same blind, looking at the same seismic cut, and not seeing a single deer all day long. It really, it's the mental part. It's the mental part.
And actually, this year I found out it's not only the mental, but we were in a little blind and we just had a tiny little peek hole, right? And so if a deer came, we opened it a little more. It's sitting in the dark.
Yes.
Dark to dark that many days.
Was it cold?
It was, I think, 15 or 20 below.
That's cold.
I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
And it's a ground blind with snow on the
Yep.
ground. So, you could have a little heater. It's not heating up much.
Right.
It tests your patience. And it really, you're like, do I really want it this bad? And
But you
there's
do.
some big bucks.
Right.
So it's worth it. But you get done with 7-8 days of that. You're like, I need a little regroup time.
My goodness, I take my hat off. That is determination. But what it does help is to hear how you approach it, because I know a lot of times we talk about these tactics, and I think sometimes we think like, we've repeated that, but it doesn't change. And I guess the other question I want to ask you is, okay, so I'm hunting and I'm somewhere where I can have food, and it's this late in the season. I know soybeans are hot. What else would you recommend if somebody can plan ahead for next year? What can they plant to possibly put them in position where they have a good food source for late season?
One of the things we do is we'll ask farmers or hire farmers to leave some of the crops. That way we're not going down to Illinois doing any of it. They put beans in, corn. We just pay them a little bit and they leave us some. That's a great way. We also like to plant green plots where we're putting in turnips, brassicas, different grasses, rye, different things to draw them in. Especially when it gets cold like this, those turnips will turn very sweet and they will come and dig through that snow. And that's a really easy food plot. We do those by hand, and you can do them in August. And that's what I like, is we're not turkey hunting, we're not busy. You do them in August, get them set up, and they really can be a great place. And I've actually killed bucks on it during the rut, because you get all these does out there. They're eating that nice green, and then the bucks are scent checking them, and you have your decoy out, and there they come.
One last question for you. What about, and I actually have my own ideas on this, but I want to ask you, when you ask a farmer to leave, let's say soybeans or corn, how much are you asking them to leave?
Well, it really depends, and part of that is because, like in Illinois, a lot of the edges are already destroyed. So the farmer, in my opinion, is getting a really good deal.
A very
because
good deal.
a lot of times it's like a little peninsula of beans, for example. Well, the deer have already mowed down quite a bit of it, or if it's corn, there might be 10 rows that are completely devastated, but I'm still paying for that, because when I take hunt stand and measure it off, like this year we did 4 acres in this spot.
Okay.
Do I really get 4 acres of beans? No, absolutely not. Am I getting the premium stuff? No. But am I paying the premium price? Of course you are.
Of course you are.
That's the way they do it. So I try to get bigger pieces because I have another one that's about a half acre. And honestly, I'm not going to pay for it again because there's almost nothing there.
Yes.
And there was almost nothing there by the time they came and combined because it was on the edge and the deer come out of the woods and they eat that first. So to me, I like having a little bit bigger piece so that way it'll last longer. Like right now, we have tons of beans there. They'll last for another probably 2-3 weeks depending on how many deer come in. And that's ideal. And we never combine any of it. They just come in next year and we'll plant the next
That's
crop.
one thing I would recommend to people because I actually wrote a column on this. Know what your deer density is and know how much a deer eats because if you use that, let's just say it's corn, the very best land in Illinois, you're going to get about 180 to 200 bushels an acre. But like you said, by December, most of that's gone. Mm-hmm. So if you have 4 acres, you have a chance. Mm-hmm. If I see so many guys, he's going to leave 3 or 4 rows for us, and I just laugh. I'm like, you're not going to have a single kernel of corn to hunt by December. Mm-hmm. So think in bigger terms if you can. Mm-hmm. And I know you said it, you're going to probably pay a premium price for it, but farmers got to make a living too, and it is an inconvenience for them if they have to say, we got to kind of leave that whole corner and not harvest it. They've got machinery they got to turn around and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and the other thing to think about too is like this year, we didn't have that many shooter bucks. I had 1 buck that I was really after on our whole farm. But by having that bigger food plot, now I can pull other people's deer over to mine, and you also have to realize that they will now eat it quicker because now you're pulling deer from all over, not just bucks, you're pulling does, everybody's coming into it. In fact, with this new snow, we could see where the deer are coming for miles, all headed to our bean field. So I think that's also something to keep in mind is there's years where you may not have a shooter on camera, but by having a food source, you may pull other people's
You might pull
shooters
something in that you didn't even know was there.
Absolutely. Every year we usually get 2 to 3 new bucks that we have never seen the last 3 to 4 days of season.
Well, we'd like to have a front row seat to see this hunt happen, and I'm sure we'll see it on TV if it does happen.
Well, hopefully we make it happen this week.
Where can people go, Melissa, to find out more about what your happenings on hunting and every day?
If you go to melissabachman.com, you can check everything out there. My show's Winchester Deadly Passion on Sportsman's Channel every single week of the year. Check it out, and hopefully this will be a hunt very soon.
And I want to see it. Well, thank you, Melissa, for joining us once again. I know you're busy, and we very much appreciate it, and good luck.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it,
Okay, for Melissa Bachman, I am Dan Schmidt. Thank you for joining us. Join us next Thursday for another brand new episode of Deer Talk Now.